Alan here for Old English Outfitters. You know, when we think of a modern cartridge, whether it be a rifle or pistol, we have a tendency to just say they're bullets or rounds of ammunition, so forth and so on. A cartridge is actually a complete self-contained thing, right? You got the brass casing these days with a projectile, it's got a primer, it's got powder. That's a cartridge. And a lot of cartridges that we are familiar with actually started life as military rounds. 4570 government, military round. 45 Colt, started as a military round. 45 ACP, 9mm. Those things all started as military cartridges. Interestingly enough, one of the current military cartridges that rules the roost in our military at the moment, and a lot of places in the world, and NATO specifically, is the .223 or the 5.56 caliber. It's an exception. It actually started life as the .223 Remington, and then when it was picked up by the military in the AR-15 type rifle, the military redesignated it 5.56. Why the heck did they do that? Why did they cause all this confusion that still exists today? And one of our motivations behind doing this video is because we have a lot of people come in and say, what is the difference? .223, 5.56, can I use them interchangeably? Why is it different? What's going on? So one of the reasons that they started and they called it 5.56 was because in 1979, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, standardized that round as a standard military round for the various countries that belonged to NATO. One of the reasons they did that, of course, was so that if action was underway and several different countries were involved, they could use each other's ammunition. So they standardized on 5.56. Well, 5.56 by 45, 5.56 times 45 millimeters, is the metric designation, the metric description for the .223 Remington. That's all it is. But the military adjusted the cartridge just a little bit, okay? So today we actually have two different specifications of this cartridge. We have the .223 Remington, which is that one right there, and we have the 5.56 by 45, which is that one right there. Now, if you look at these two, they look like they're the same. And for the most part, they are the same. The bullet diameter is the same. The general dimensions are fundamentally the same. But there is a difference. Is that difference important? Yes and no. Depends a little bit on what you're doing with the cartridge, with the rifle you have, and depends a little bit on what rifle it has. And it has actually more to do with the chambering that the rifle has rather than the cartridge itself. Most AR-15s that are in this caliber, because we know they make AR-15 types in other calibers, right? Or if you prefer modern sporting rifle, same thing. Most of them are chambered in the 5.56 by 45. That's the specification for the chamber. What's the difference between that and a .223 chamber? Well, the .223 chamber is tighter. The 5.56 chamber is a little bit bigger in the front end. The throat's that area where the bullet sets just before it gets into the rifling, where it tapers into the rifling. The throat on the 5.56 chamber is a little bit bigger than it is on the .223 chamber. Because of that, a .223 specification round will shoot in a 5.56 chamber with no problem at all. But because the .223 specification chamber is a little tighter, it's not a good idea to shoot a 5.56 round in it. Can you get away with it? Maybe. You might shoot 100 of them and have no trouble. And 101 might blow your gun up. You might put one in and one might blow your gun up. But it only applies if it's a .223 specification chamber. If we look at these two cartridges that are sitting in front of us, they look like they're substantially the same. And like I said, generally speaking, they are. But there is a little bit of a difference if you look really, really close. The part of the difference you cannot see is the 5.56 brass is just a little bit thicker internally than .223 brass, just a little. Can't see that part of it. What you can see if you look really close is the shoulder, this part right here. That's the shoulder of the cartridge. The shoulder on the 5.56 is just a little bit different shape. It's just a touch bigger than it is here, with the result that these two bullets, and these two projectiles, by the way, are exactly the same. No difference. 55 grain full metal jacket, 55 grain full metal jacket. But if you compare them, you'll notice this one sets just very slightly, not very much, just very slightly longer than this one. And it isn't a ton of difference. It's extremely small, but it's there because of that shoulder difference. And one of the reasons that shoulder is a little bit different is because these two cartridges are different in their velocities, okay? So, if we look at the box here, on the front of the box, it says, this is PMC ammunition, 223 Remington, 55 grain full metal jacket, 2,900 feet per second muzzle velocity. That's the 223 round. The 5.56 round is going to operate at a little bit higher pressure. On the top of the box, it says 55 grain full metal jacket. No difference, right? With the 223 we just looked at. But the muzzle velocity is, are you ready for this? 3,180 feet per second. It's traveling faster. How does it travel faster? It has more pressure behind it to generate that increase in velocity. So operating pressure a little higher than here. That's why that chamber becomes important. What does all this mean to us? What does all this mean? You got an AR-15, you got two AR-15s, you got three, you got 10, doesn't matter. They're all chambered in 5.56. What does this mean? If you're looking for absolute maximum accuracy, we want to put 20 bullets through the same hole at 300 yards or whatever you're looking for. Maximum accuracy. Then you need a 5.56 specification round in that gun to get the absolute tightest accuracy. And you might experiment with bullet weights and sort of thing to figure that out, right? If, on the other hand, you're doing what most of us are doing with these guns, you're just shooting holes in paper and having a little fun, range isn't terribly far, and you're not too worried about it, and you'd like for that rifle to shoot in, let's see, as long as it shoots under 2 inches at 100 yards, we're happy with that. Then it doesn't matter if it's a 5.56 chamber, which one of these you shoot. My advice usually is we're just shooting holes in paper, we're just having some fun, shoot whichever one's cheaper. One might be cheaper than the other, depending on where you're at. Pick the one that's cheap. The paper isn't going to know. The gun isn't really going to know. You aren't going to know shooting it. Just pick the one that's cheap. That's where the rubber meets the road on this, right? Now, that's if AR-15 type weapon, right? If you have a bolt-action rifle, and there are bolt-action rifles that are chambered in the 5.56, so no problem, either one. But if you have a bolt-action rifle that are chambered, as many of them are, in just 223 Remington, don't buy 5.56 ammo for it. You might get away with it. Well, if you're being lucky. Let's not rely on luck. It is going to raise the chamber pressure. It could raise it to unsafe levels. Just don't do it. Stick with 223 specification ammo, and you'll be fine. There's another wrinkle in this, and that is something called the 223 Wild. W-Y-L-D-E, Wild. What the heck is the 223 Wild? What bullet is that? It isn't a bullet. It isn't a cartridge. These things right here, either one of them will work in it. The idea behind the 223 Wild, and there are AR-15s chambered this way, they're bolt action chambered this way, is to make a compromise, kind of a hybrid chamber. A chamber that is specifically designed to get maximum accuracy potential out of either a 223 or a 5.56 specification round of ammunition. That's it. It's a chambering. It's not a round of ammunition. There's more to this business that we're not going to go into right now. I'm going to prime it by saying that both of these cartridges that are set in front of me have 55 grain full metal jacket bullets. That's where this thing started life. 55 grain full metal jacket bullet. And then for varmints, 55 grain expanding bullet of some sort. That's where this thing started life. But it has evolved. And through its evolution over time, we have now, actually there used to be I think it was less than 50 grain bullet for this cartridge in the 223 spec. There are 50 grain bullets for it that currently you can find. In the 5.56 or the 223, you can find heavier bullets. You can find 62 grains, 68, 69, 75 grain bullets, 77 grain bullets. And in that evolution, that delves into other technical aspects that come down to what you're doing with the gun. Accuracy, maximum accuracy, maybe particularly long range, hunting, varmints or other types of game, because this can be used on a larger game with the right circumstances. So that's a subject for another video that we'll do where we'll talk a little more about that. But for the moment, hopefully that laid out, I hope in an understandable fashion, the basic difference between the two cartridges and how you can use it interchangeably in a 5.56 chamber, but not in a 223 chamber. And either one is fine in a 223 wild chamber. So that's what we have for right now. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Take care, and we'll see you next time. I'm Alan for Old English Outfitters.